Hello and welcome to the Overly Animated Podcast, where we take animation seriously. We provide fan-oriented and analytic discussions on a variety of animated shows, movies, and anime, including Steven Universe, Gravity Falls, and Rick and Morty. I'm Dylan Hysen, and today I'm joined by Sam Quattro.
Hello.
Today, Sam and I are going to be looking back on Rose's Scabbard, the Steven Universe episode 45, I guess, of Season 1, towards the end of Season 1.
Just in past March.
Yeah, it aired this year. It's kind of hard to believe.
Really?
I think so. I mean, I marathoned the show around then, so to me, like, it could have been any time in the past. You know, I think I marathoned it after this episode aired, but this is the first time we're going to be doing a look back for an episode of television. We do retrospectives on movies, and I think it's a good idea to give us the option of discussing some older prominent episodes of shows we cover. Like, we can do Jailbreak and Sworn to the Sword, although we did talk about that one earlier in the podcast's run. And today we're discussing Rose's Scabbard, spoilers for this, and all of Steven Universe. And of course, we do regular Steven Universe coverage every new episode, although they haven't announced the date yet as of this recording.
September 1st. Well, yeah, it's still September 1st, guys. Where's the... Make it snappy.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about this for like a second. Cartoon Network pulled this episode from it airing like in August, right? Or was it like sometime early August?
They're supposed to come back some point in August, but they're like, JK.
Yeah, not this episode that we're discussing today, but Nightmare Hospital, which theoretically would have aired in August. And it's pretty disappointing that they would schedule the return of the show and then later pull it. They did this very prominently a few years ago with Young Justice, and fans kind of revolted over them on this. And this is troubling behavior from a network that is usually the lesser of the three evils with regard to Disney, Nick, and Cartoon Network. But it's possible Disney is the lesser of the three evils and Cartoon Network is not. But, you should more consistently schedule your shows, Cartoon Network, especially this one, which is really special. You can't just be pulling it willy-nilly. That's how you lose fans.
I was just thinking about using the word willy-nilly.
Well, I'm glad we're on the same page with our willy-nilly usage. But anyway, let's talk Rose's Scabbard today, and overlyanimated.com is where you can find all about this podcast. Sam, we just both rewatched this episode. What do you think of this episode of Steven Universe? What did you think about it when it first aired, and like how do you like emotionally react to it and stuff?
So when it first aired, so here's my Steven Universe story. Basically, I watched it from the beginning, but then like I kind of fell behind around episode 20. But then I heard about the Steven Bomb. I was like, oh, I should start watching this again. So I caught up, and then it was like the second day of Steven Bomb that I was caught up. So this was at the end of my marathon, and it just like hit the feels really hard at like 4 a.m. when I watched it. And it hit the feel like I think I've seen this episode a grand total like 6 or 7 times. I just rewatch it over and over because it's a lot of feelings.
Was this your most watched episode?
Yes.
Is it your favorite episode of Steven Universe?
That's hard to say. I think it still is. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And what did you think of it this time? Still elicit an emotional reaction from you?
Yeah, it did. But I don't know. This time I found myself thinking about what had happened in Sworn to the Sword and Friendship. And sort of like having that in reference to this, and sort of reading into the clues in the script more.
Yeah, and we can talk about some of those. It's interesting to look at this episode after it originally aired, especially because so much of what they talk about in this episode is like vaguely new information at the time of when it airs. Like everything about this is where we made our stand against the home world. I don't even know if that would have been revealed before this, right?
I don't think so.
Yeah, so it was kind of just this huge episode when you watch it for the first time because of all this new info, in addition to just how emotional it is. I've also seen this one a bunch, like maybe going on 10 times now, and it's my most watched. Like every episode of Steven Universe I've seen once, then I've seen like Jailbreak a few times, and I've seen this one just over and over.
Yeah, it's like an extra like hour before work. I just watched it a few times.
It's
I
just it's so striking. I mean, I've seen Sworn to the Sword a few times now too. I also love that one. To me, there's a trio of, I've said this, this is getting old, but there's 3 incredibly high tier episodes of the show. There's a ton of good ones, and then there's like 3 that stand out. So there's Rosa Scabbard, Jailbreak, and Sworn to the Sword. And I actually think this is the best of the 3. I think critical quality wise, and like which one I connect to the most. It's unlike any other, like there's so much that this does interestingly. Like, it's so kind of special. It's so emotional. It's such a great character exhibition in Pearl. Notably, it does all of its emotional storytelling without the use of song, which is something.
Oh,
yeah, the other 2 that I also think are really good have these incredible songs in them. And this is kind of the hallmark of Rebecca Sugar's storytelling, is using...
You gotta emote, you use songs.
Yeah, you emote through musical number. And this one doesn't do that. And it's somehow even more successful despite the lack of her signature storytelling device. And
what if there's a Steven Universe musical in the...
It's basically already a musical, though.
Yeah, I mean, like on Broadway.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Like how there was a Pokemon musical, but that wasn't on Broadway.
Yeah, and we can... Anyway, we can talk about how this episode is different, because I'm interested in to see what you read into more now. But I think, primarily, I feel like... Okay, what's notable about this one, first of all, and then we'll work up to my 2 primary... concepts that this episode tries to accomplish. What's notable about this episode is that it's so obtuse in message, motivation, and kind of emotional response. Like, it's obviously a high emotional response you get from it, but it's kind of not even clear what's happening, like with the Pearl. But like, it's much clearer now looking back on this, now that we've had Sworn to the Sword and stuff. But this one is just trying to figure out what's going on Pearl's head in this episode is very difficult, and it took me like at least 3 or 4 viewings of it before I even felt like I had any kind of concrete concept. I mean, obviously, ostensibly, like you kind of get her devotion to Rose here, which wasn't obvious at all before this episode. So that's the first motivate thing that this episode tries to accomplish is. It needs to establish Pearl's heavy investment in Rose, and it's beyond that though. It's changing the primary audience outlook of Pearl. That's what this episode does, because before this episode, Pearl's primary characteristic is probably that
Mom.
She cares for Steven as a mom, right? Yeah. And then here, what this episode is trying to tell us is no, we don't have the full information. Her primary character motivation is her devotion to Rose, right? So this episode needs to single-handedly change our entire perspective, and I think it does, which is incredible.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and it's so... I feel like this show hinges on this episode and Jailbreak, so much so, because... looking back on the first season of the show, what Rebecca Sugar and the writers chose to do is basically say, okay, this first season is going to be exposition, and we're going to work our way up to the basic fundamentals of 2 of our characters, and 3 if you want to count Amethyst too, with On the Run. But we're going to work our way up to these just very, very basic things about our 2 of our main characters. And we need to try to establish their basic personalities and how they usually function with Steven for the first 40 episodes, and then we can kind of change it at the end of the season. It's a very odd choice that they try to make here. But really, they're changing everything we know about Pearl in this episode and everything we know about Garnet and Jailbreak. I don't know, that wasn't obvious to me until kind of more recently, just how much the beginning of the majority of season 1 is really, we watch with incomplete information when you watch it for the first time.
Yeah.
And since then, they've kind of hit super hard on Pearl, this being her primary character motivation. I mean, since then we've gotten this extended theme song from Comic-Con, right? And my favorite part of that is when they have... the 3 gems basically saying their primary motivation, and it's great. I mean, they're very.
I love it.
They're very lampshading it, but it's not lampshading it. But they're
state your purpose.
Yeah, just state your purpose, and this is Pearl's is living up to Rose, and Garnet is living at the fight for the place where I'm free because she's a fusion, right? And
Amethyst just like I'm born. I was
born on Earth, which we don't know until on the run too. So they do pull this with Amethyst, but I feel like it's less important to her character, I guess, and less. Although I think Amethyst is more subtle than Pearl and Garnet, right? So
she's the cool sister.
The cool sister as opposed to the mom. Yeah. Okay, so that's the first thing that this episode does is it needs to just bluntly introduce this character motivation for Pearl. The second thing it needs to do is it's the primary function within the episode is explore Pearl's outlook on Steven, and just this incredibly complex dynamic she has to play between caring for Steven as like himself and how he's just like this new version of Rose that's also not Rose. Just basically with the entire thing after Pearl gets upset and like runs off, that entire thing that she's going through there, and it's just super complex. And the episode is not obvious with how it explores it. It's really striking how the show approaches it, because I think one of the most striking moments is when Pearl seemingly just doesn't care about Steven for like an entire sequence, right? When Steven's chasing after, and then Steven jumping, and Pearl kind of for a second being like, concerned. Steven? Yeah, for a second, but then
she peeks over the cliff and he's hanging.
And she doesn't necessarily go help him. She's like, okay, he's fine. And then
she doesn't help him at all.
Yeah. So right. Do you agree with me? Like, this is really different than anything we've had previously with Pearl.
I do agree. In fact, like, I don't know, for some reason I can't really watch any episode previous to this. I mean, I can. There's like a select few, but like a lot of the episodes from season 1, they just don't live up. And like this, I think, is a real turning point in the season, and it changes everything.
I mean, you take something like I'm trying to find an episode guy. What's the episode called? The Space Race? Yeah, Space Race.
Yeah, Space Race.
That's a great Pearl episode. But looking back, it's like, what is even important here? You know?
Yeah, I mean, I just watched that like the other day, and I was like, yeah.
You're like, yeah. But, I mean, that's what we were talking about with just the show establishes so much here that hadn't been said previously. And it's just so... I think it's probably so striking to watch that when you've previously only seen Pearl be a mom. And maybe that's when select few people started hating Pearl, you know? After seeing that reaction to Steven jumping. I could see that.
Yeah, I definitely see that. But...
Yeah. But this is... I mean, it's not necessarily... it's not necessarily like everything hinges on this one, because this is very much just a Pearl-centric one. Like, we still have everything about the other characters and about the plot.
I guess in my mind, it hinges on this one.
One thing that I will say that kind of relates to this is that it's hard... I think this episode is a big reason why I was maybe kind of disappointed by a lot of the stuff we got with the last Steven bomb. And if you listen to this podcast, you may have been frustrated by my disappointment with it, but just watching this episode, it's so you can see what the show is capable of, emotionally and storytelling wise. And also, this episode is not like it's a big plot one, right? This is very condensed, kind of solo, just with Pearl type story that doesn't really move the plot super forward, although it did give us new information at the time. And it's like this show is capable of these types of incredible emotional depth episodes, though the ones with, when we just get an episode about Onion, it's hard to swallow maybe sometimes when comparing it side by side.
Yeah. I guess it depends on like the character too, because Onion's sort of like he's a silly...
It's like you have this character Pearl who's maybe the best character on television, right? And then you have Onion, and he's a nothing character. So I don't know. And I feel like I'm less sure that the show is gonna focus on these big episodes. Like, I think we're gonna go back to these kind of low key episodes for a lot the rest of season 2. It's interesting too, because I was genuinely not sure where the direction of the show would go after season 1, right? Because, like I said, this season 1 is just purposely exposition, and then we actually get basic information on the show at the end. So then season 2 could just be plot, 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 and important character stuff now that we have all the exposition out of the way. But now I feel like the show is kind of at this point where it's not, we're past the point where they're hiding everything from us and we have some basic info, and now we expect it to move with that. So moving back into kind of some of the middle parts of season 1 is not going to be as successful now as it was before.
Yeah. I sort of feel that way about Avatar a little bit. Avatar: Last Airbender.
Like how?
Like how you said, sort of like the season 1 is sort of setting up the show and the universe. And at least for me, like, it's hard to go back to those season 1 episodes when, like, we have book 2 and book 3, where it's just, like, plot happening.
Yeah. It's a little bit with that. They do a little bit of the thing with the info. I mean, we get some very basic info about the show at the end of book 1 and in the beginning of book 2, but I think that's also more of a quality thing a little bit. Like, the beginning of season 1, quality-wise, is pretty different from the end and from book 2. Here, I think the season 1 still had some high-quality episodes in the middle. I also think it's just an information thing, too. Let's talk specifics about this, okay?
Yes.
So, I was talking a little bit about Pearl's kind of complex view on Steven, at the end. And I feel like that's the highlight to talk about. What do you... okay, try to summarize it now that you've seen it a lot, basically. Like, what do you think is going through Pearl's head from, like, even the moment that, like, she finds out about Lion and, like, probably from then on, right?
Probably she feels, maybe not betrayed, but sort of less special and less important than she thought that she was.
Yeah, for sure.
Maybe less loved a little bit too. I don't know. She definitely shows that, and she mentions the Amethyst and Garnet. Like, they can't understand how she feels, stuff like that. I don't know. I definitely think it's like she feels like her pedestal has been
Yeah, we definitely start there, right? Like,
yeah.
She thinks she was more important to Rose, and that's kind of why she's upset with Lion. But then with Steven, like, I guess I feel like this episode is Pearl is forced to. So before this, Pearl obsessed with Rose, right? And then there's Steven, and I feel like Pearl is able to act so great towards Steven by kind of compartmentalizing the fact that Steven is Rose a little bit. Like, I feel like for the until this episode, she's able to separate Steven from Rose, and then here she's kind of forced to confront the fact that this is Rose, basically.
Yeah, which culminates in the end where she talks to Steven like as if he was Rose, I guess, sort of.
Yeah, and
with the hologram and stuff.
And it's like Pearl's able to have this incredible affection for Steven by kind of it's because he's Rose's son, but also because it's not thinking about Rose, right? Like the situation with Rose. She could just kind of put her obsession with Rose aside and focus on Steven.
Which is kind of impressive, I would think.
I mean, she had, like, thousands of years. Oh, not with Steven, but, actually, that's true.
She had, like, thousands of years with Rose. And, like, suddenly one day, poof, no more. And it's only been, around 12 years since, and everybody's just a mess.
Yeah. So, it's... I guess Pearl, the most striking thing about this is Pearl's kind of emotionally distant reaction to Steven, right? And the way I see it now is kind of that Pearl has, unlike the previous things we've seen in the series, separated, like, she's kind of, her obsession with Pearl has, like, came back to the forefront, and her caring of Steven has now gone into replacing the place she like hid away her Rose love and obsession, you know.
Yeah.
So like now that it's like she can only have one of them at a time because they kind of contradict for her a little bit because Steven himself is kind of a contradiction. So it's
I feel like some of the writers must have psychology degrees. This is some pretty complex stuff.
Well, like,
and I barely understand it.
Yeah, I mean, it's not. I don't know. It's tough because right. So it's like okay. So Pearl has Rose mode and Steven mode, and only one can be on at a time. And it's weird because Rose mode is kind of causing Steven mode, but at the same time, they can't really be like the same thing. And so, what this episode needs to do is hit us hard with the fact that no, Steven isn't Pearl's primary motivation. Rose is Pearl's primary motivation. So once that comes to the forefront, Steven isn't as important to her. So that's why she's able to react like she is when Steven jumps off the thing and almost falls. She's able because those emotions aren't at her forefront anymore. Mm-hmm. And I guess one of the big questions with this episode, like I feel like so much hinges on that. Do you think it's successful in convincing us that this is a reasonable reaction from Pearl?
From Pearl or just in general? 'Cause in general, I think it's a reasonable reaction.
From this character who previous to this moment we'd only seen her care about Steven.
I'm not really sure, actually.
I think if the answer was yes, this is a reasonable reaction from Pearl, then this episode wouldn't be as good, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Like the reason this episode's so good is because it's so complex emotionally, but at the same time, it almost by being so complex emotionally, it almost has a thing that happens that doesn't make sense. But at the same time, that fact that that's so striking to us, that thing that happened, really hits home this thing that it needs. The primary purpose of the episode that it needs to show us, which is this devotion from Pearl to Rose. And I feel like it doesn't even hit home until this moment, really, when she can put Steven aside.
Yeah.
And I just think that scene at the end is so wonderful. Everything from her jumping, Pearl showing Steven the sequence with Rose asking her to join her. Pearl, sometimes I wonder if she can see me through your eyes. What would she think of me now? Right.
Oh, it's sad.
So sad.
Man.
Yeah. And that moment's just and then Steven's reaction as well. I think you're pretty great. And that starts the ending sequence with I think some of the best music that the show's ever done from the composers, and not like the musical sequences, but the score, and just the montage with Steven and Pearl interacting at the end, and them kind of not going back to normal, but just going back to their previous dynamic with this new thing in play, and Steven, still caring for Pearl despite the fact that she didn't have a great reaction to him.
Steven's so good.
He really is so good, yeah.
Oh, he's such a sweetheart. Like, I think we should all aspire to be Steven.
We should all aspire to be Steven.
Even though, like, maybe it isn't the best, because he kind of gets hurt a lot, but...
He's too compassionate, maybe, yeah. Like,
thanks, bros.
He what?
I said thanks,
Thanks, Rose. Yeah, I mean, that is Rose, right? That's the hard part about this. I think just that entire ending sequence with the music over it is some of the best stuff the show's ever done. And Steven brings out this flag, and then that gets Pearl happy again, and she starts like reenacting
history lesson
battles from the war and teaching Steven. And at the end, they're riding on lion, and Pearl's face is just so...
She looks so tired.
Complex. That's her primary emotion there? I don't know. I don't even know what it is there.
She looks... Because she has the little eye lines.
Yeah, she does, looks exhausted. Tired. And then she's looking down at Steven to hammer home the point of the episode, and like, how does she react to Steven? It's so hard for her. I just think that sequence is so incredible.
I agree.
Pearl talking to so that's one thing, yeah. And then the other big thing the episode does is, which we've been talking about, is Pearl hammering home this devotion Pearl has for Rose, and it's just the entire sequence of her talking to Rose, but right before this ending one, I also feel like we got something I kind of noticed here, which I didn't notice before, is like at the end, it's like, Rose is talking about asking Pearl to join her, and kind of it's this interesting dynamic of it's obvious that Rose knows Pearl is gonna say yes, right, and that she's in love with her, and it's like Rose knows this and is still asking her anyway, right?
Yeah.
So it's how do you view Rose in this flashback? Because this was the first kind of glimpse we got of her. I feel like you could see her as unsympathetic for taking advantage of Pearl.
I was about to say the opposite. I think, I don't know. I feel like in this situation, she made it clear, like, what would happen if Pearl said yes, and Pearl, being Pearl, said yes, and I don't know. I don't really think it was her taking advantage of Pearl.
I think she accomplishes the minimum amount of not being a jerk in terms of
not as big as a jerk as you could have been award.
Yeah, I think she accomplishes that because she warns Pearl of the consequences and stuff like that, and that's like the minimum amount of human compassion you can have towards someone is completely devoted to you, I feel like. And she does accomplish that. So I don't have a completely negative outlook of Rose, but I also think that she is still consciously taking advantage of Pearl here. We don't see it from Rose's perspective. We see it from Pearl's perspective and the emotions that Pearl has.
Pearl's just like so completely in love, and it's like, oh.
It's like she's like, she's making it clear to Pearl and giving Pearl a choice, but no, she's not giving Pearl a choice. She knows how Pearl feels towards her. It's that scene is so good because it makes it obvious that Rose knows how Pearl feels towards her, and she kind of has to ask her anyway. It's still for a greater good and for a moral positive that she sees. But I don't know. I guess the direction I've seen with these interactions is that I'm like super sympathetic towards Pearl, and you feel towards her in this devotion thing, and then Rose I'm kind of iffy on right now. Like I feel like a lot of this is selfishness from Rose towards the cause, and Pearl is kind of the victim of it.
That's a good way to look at it. Yeah, I haven't really thought of it that way.
I feel like the flashback episode we had in the with Pearl and Greg fighting kind of also went towards that, right? Because it's like Rose is also exploring a romance with someone else while still knowing that Pearl is. I mean, this is later. That's later, but it's like she strung Pearl along for this battle and stuff like that, and then they're not together after that.
Is Rose a big jerk?
I feel like this is a question we don't talk enough about. I kind of think Rose is a little bit of a jerk. I'm not sure how much yet.
I gotta see more.
Anyway, yeah, that's kind of an interesting discussion. The thing that I referenced a little bit about that seems interesting now is at the end of it, Pearl's like yes, and then she's like my Pearl. My Pearl. Is this a foreshadow of Pearl being one of many Pearls? My Pearl, right? That's interesting.
I hope not.
This is my one Pearl. You are my Pearl, and there are also other Pearls, but you are my Pearl, right?
This, oh god, you're just like breaking everything in half.
Well, no, I don't mean this in like a way to make it unsympathetic towards Rose. I just mean this could have been a foreshadowing of this new information in the finale.
No, right? I understand. It's just less romantic that way. Less like.
There's some ways to view it,
Less
ignoring kind of Rose's motivation anymore, because I don't know if that's super relevant. Just the Pearl. Oh yeah, there's one more thing I want to talk about. The Pearl, devotion towards Rose's side. I feel like that's kind of one of the big things this episode tries to accomplish is. And this is the big thing Pearl's character has become, is this so devoted, obsessed, in love with Rose, or whatever you want to call it. And I feel like they're so successful at showing this emotion and making us feel for Pearl and the situation because of it. It's like one of the primary emotional moments that emotional beats that the show hits on now. And it's kind of interesting how well they're able to do it. I don't know, what makes Rebecca Sugar, want this to happen in the show, and it's just such a strong thing. Do you find it relatable?
Yeah, definitely.
it's like, I don't know, none of us are going to be 5,000 years or 10,000 or whatever years obsessed with this eternal figure, but just kind of this obsession of a person and, you know, this being in love with them. I feel like it's something that it's an emotion, it's like more complex than we could feel, but at the same time playing into just emotions that we've had, I guess.
Yeah, I think
know.
it's like a hyperbole of like basic human emotion, sort of like a taken to like an extreme.
It's just like everything about Pearl now, about this just eternal being, is so based off of this one figure now in her life, right? Like, and it's someone who we don't even necessarily see as super special. Like, the only reason we see Rose is like so special is just how Pearl talks about her.
Yeah, because yeah. So I'm just feeling a lot of feelings right now.
I don't know, like, I don't know how to discuss this more, but we kind of get into it more in Sworn to the Sword, but it's just so, I don't know, it's hard. So much of the show is based off it. Like, I want to discuss the concept behind this more, but it's kind of something that's hard to get into. Like, how do you discuss this basic, like, emotional concept and stuff like that? Like, I want to relate this to Adventure Time, kind of. And, like, I feel like Rose's Scabbard is like, reminds me of the best episodes of Adventure Time. Like,
I can see that, yeah.
like the flashback with Marceline and Ice King, right? And that whole thing. And some of the other ones. But I feel like ultimately this is better than, like, the classic Adventure Time episodes. And I think and of course Rebecca Sugar worked on these episodes and stuff, and I feel like why this is more successful even so than those is those episodes achieve emotional depth, like, kind of from characters, like, it's like these are characters we're familiar with, but these are also like these past versions of the characters that and it's also these minor characters, kind of. I feel like Steven Universe is more successful because we care so much more about what's happening and with these about Pearl than about anything in there. And it's like we have this incredibly emotional episode but it's also about one of the characters who we really care about. And like, I think it's the success of the format of Steven Universe of being more of a continuous story, but also because of I feel like because we introduce this episode's like based around this like devotion towards a person concept and stuff like that. So I feel like making these kind of relatable, big emotional concepts, I guess, maybe gets us there. I don't know. That was kind of a mess of.
No, it's fine.
What do you think about that?
I don't know. I'm starting to think right now, maybe all of this is just a metaphor for Rebecca Sugar's life.
Well, we don't need to. We don't need
Duh.
to. We don't.
I mean,
need
that's
to,
all great artists do, right?
Well, it's explicitly like Steven's her brother and stuff like that, you know. But I guess it's like with
I was like half kidding with that.
Yeah, I know, but I guess it's like with Pearl, it's like you take you being in love, right, and then past love that, like, for whatever reason didn't work out, and then you like extrapolate it into this character and this concept for it, yeah. But we're not even talking about the beginning of the episode that much, but it's kind of just to kind of set up for this stuff at the end. What you mentioned in the beginning, looking at this episode in a new light with new information. Do you remember specifics of things that you kind of see differently now than before you watched?
Pearl being all like sort of excited that they won the battle instead of reflecting on the lives lost.
Yeah.
What
do you relate that to?
Sort of like what happened in what was the middle one with all the like the gem hands that were the cluster?
With all the what?
The hand, like the gem body part hands, all like being all up in Garnet's face.
Oh yeah, in that episode, yeah. Of that was the second Steven bomb.
Yeah, it reminded me of that, or like call to like friendship. I don't know, just Pearl being more wrapped up in the glory of winning in the name of Rose than really anything else. Like that kind of like I guess like debilitates her empathy
Yeah.
for others.
Yeah, for sure. Right, and that's kind of on display here with Steven, right? Like, even the one person who we think she cares about the most is shoved aside when Rose is reawakened in her. And I feel like that sets up this these other lack of empathy Pearl things later. And, like, I still am very sympathetic towards Pearl, despite, you know, some of the questionable moral things she does later. And I feel like it's because of this episode, what this episode establishes.
I think Pearl is probably the most fleshed out character.
It's interesting because in an interview
Thus
before
far.
the last Stephen Bomb or whatever, they said Rebecca Sugar said they haven't explored Pearl as much as the others, which I thought was interesting.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, now we have. I don't know. I definitely feel out of all the gems, Pearl is the one that we know the most about.
I mean, it's possible Pearl is the most enigmatic to us and the one we're least sure of her future behavior.
Or maybe she's the one that like is the most quote unquote human.
I mean, yeah. I think we've emotionally connected to her more than.
Yes, that's
and we've had the most moments to be able to do that, and we've explored her inner dynamics the most, right? I mean, to me, it was clearly Amethyst, which is the one we hadn't explored the most, but at least we did get a lot of her in the last Stephen Bomb.
Hopefully more to come.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm running out of steam on these high concept discussions about Pearl. I don't know, what else did I highlight from the episode earlier that we could talk about? I am tired, but also this is draining stuff more so than our normal podcast discussions, which is why this is so successful in the show. It's hard to even consider. We talked about her stuff with Lion, yeah. Pearl said no, Rose didn't have a line, because if Rose had a line I would have known about it, yeah. And you talked about the jealousy feelings with that and stuff like that. She said you never even met her to Steven, which was the beginning of the blow up. We didn't even talk about that relating to the stuff that happens later, but that's basically the same concepts that we were discussing before.
I feel like also with the existence of Lion and the existence of things that Rose didn't tell Pearl, I probably mentioned this earlier, but I guess to reiterate, it sort of makes Pearl feel lesser about herself. Like, if we are going with the whole thing that Pearl is one of many, and Rose sort of made her feel special, but there are things that Rose didn't share with her that makes her feel less special and probably, like, kicks down her self-esteem a ton.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like Rose is the one person that made Pearl feel special, and if she finds out she's not as special to her, and she can't, be as, like, assured and stuff like that. Yeah, and I guess wrapping up, like, we have that, this episode has so much emotional stuff with Pearl and Steven, and then it also, I feel like, has a few good humor moments, too, with Steven training Lion, calling his name was one of the great moments for Steven's voice actor and everything involving that.
Really, because I kind of find that kind of annoying every time I watch this episode. So I'm just like, I kind of want to skip past these 4 seconds.
That's one thing that's better. That's a consequence of rewatching things is that sometimes these types of things can get old when, if you're only watching it once, then I feel like that's more successful, that gag.
Lion.
Yeah. Well, you're doing it now, too, so.
Lion. I like Lion. Lion's cool.
And then Lion is interesting. And we still need to explore more with Lion, despite the fact that we've had like 4 or 5 Lion episodes, We had Amethyst and Garnet trying to get the big thing through the door in the background of the big weapon thing. I don't know, is it an axe? What is it? Yeah. That was also really good. It's like, yeah.
There's a theory going around Tumblr that some sort of amethyst-like gem was the one that Pearl was fighting and sworn to the sword in the flashbacks. Because of the axe, and the color was purple.
Interesting.
Anyway.
Yeah, so all of these things overall, I feel like, just make this such a special episode. And it's like, I don't know, maybe something like Sworn to the Sword is more obvious in what it's trying to do and kind of more polished. I don't know. There's a certain element of roughness to this episode too, that not in like its art, not that the art is bad or anything like that, but it's just very kind of these striking raw moments that happen constantly. Yeah. And it's kind of, I feel like it's maybe easy to misinterpret those as like undeveloped writing, but I feel like if you look into them in depth, then you get to the level of discussion that we've had here.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I think they definitely thought a lot about what they were writing down.
Yeah.
Psychology.
And it's like, even though this episode has a lot of blunt lines, like I don't think any of them come across to me as just kind of blunt storytelling dialogue, right? I feel like all of the dialogue is successful.
Plus, I guess with that could be like attributed to the like 11-minute runtime they have.
Yeah, true.
Like, you have to get your point across.
I think this is one of the most successful uses of the 11-minute runtime. Like, even the big great sequence at the end is like there's like 2-3 minutes. Like, they accomplish so much.
I agree with that 100%.
They like I said, they're basically redefining this entire character, and they do it in 11 minutes. You know, it's pretty incredible. Okay, I hope we've achieved sufficient discussion on this. We can always revisit the episode again. I mean, this is the one I always revisit, so it would be the most likely candidate. Although we can talk about Joint Story, we can talk about Jailbreak on these look back episodes.
We should talk about Gem Glow.
Which one is Gem Glow?
That's the first one.
Oh, we could. Yeah, we could look back on the first episode. The mid-season finale, we could do that from season 1.
I haven't watched that since I watched that for the first time.
I haven't rewatched it either. I should, because Lapis, though. Because Lapis, you know.
Oh, I want to mention, I believe that there is a very low-key Alkaline Trio reference in this episode.
Where?
So, when they're in the armory, and, Steven's, like, pushing, like, his flesh to get the things to come up, the triple light cannon pack comes up, and Pearl, she's, like, correcting him with the names. She says the Core Design Trio. And I think that's a little, like, too...
You think,
I see what they're... I see you.
I was like, where in this episode could there be a reference to something? But I actually, I like think that if there was going to be a reference to anything in this episode, it would totally be with Pearl just randomly naming things that happen in the armory, right? Because that was all. I'm not sure if. I don't think any of that means anything. I think that they just made that up. I think they just gave things names, right? I don't think they're going to explore those things anymore.
But always in my mind, whenever I see that, I'm like, that's a low key Alkaline Trio reference. To me.
Yeah, we had seen the light cannon before this too. We're pretty early on in the series, right?
Alkaline Trio is a band, by the way.
Says Sam in
for the
disclaimer voice. It's Sam's disclaimer voice.
For the people who at home that don't know.
The viewers at home, yeah. Okay. I'm Dylan Hysen, that's Sam Quattro.
Thanks.
You can find all of our social media links and everything about this podcast at overlyanimated.com. You can support us at patreon.com/overlyanimated. Thanks to our patrons, Andy, Beatrice, Mitch, Nate, Cordell, and Shayna, aka Buzz Lightyear, Beatrix Lestrange, Fever Mitch, Nathan Philly, and Cordell University in Hayno. We will have regular Steven Universe discussions, and I'll try to do more of these check-ins on the show if the hiatus continues, which hopefully it will not. Because I'm definitely looking forward to Nightmare Hospital, which airs next.
I feel like I'm in a desert without Steven Universe. I thought that would really help me in a desert, because, like, I would ideally like to get out, like, maybe like a car. But, like, I think on the list of things that I would put in a desert, a car, like a car that can, like, go on sand. A camel. Camel's like a car. Water, Steven Universe.
In that order.
Yeah.
Maybe water should be number 1.
Because if you can get out of the desert faster, that's better.
Yeah, that's true. You don't need water if you can get out. Yeah. Okay, this is the type of...
No. Map out of the desert.
Yeah, that's another good one.
Like a transportation mode out of the desert.
How good? Yeah, but what good does a map do, though, if, like, everything around you looks the same?
I don't know.
Isn't that a good...
Ask, what's his face? Professor Zay.
Yeah, we'll get Professor Zay in there, yeah. That's number 1. You want Professor Zay to come with you.
I mean, he didn't even find the library until the punk showed up, so whatever.
Till the punks showed up. Okay, we're good. Last thoughts on the episode?
Still my fave, but Dylan's for the changed perspectives for me a little bit, so I have to
Interesting.
sit and think about it.
I wonder if I always have these. I mean, I kind of forced myself to critically think about this more when I was watching this time. I don't know. I feel like I've thought about this episode differently in the past, so maybe we'll revisit
I
it
think
again.
maybe because I like empathize with Pearl so much, I also see Rose as like this untouchable, amazing being.
I mean, to a certain extent, they want us to think that, but like if you look into Rose at all, it's like, why is Rose special? Like, what's going on here? And that I feel like that's what leads a lot of fans to believe that she's like a gem ruler, you know?
Yeah.
Like I think that makes sense if you start looking at it like that.
I'm just a simple person.
Well, it's not like the show's given us anything on the surface and next step level viewing. I feel like is if you don't think about it at all, I feel like Rose definitely comes across as this godlike figure too. But I don't know. I just don't think there's enough of her to really evaluate. Even now that we've gotten glimpses of her in flashbacks. Even now.
We'll see.
I don't know. I do wonder if we'll see more Rose this season. Not sure.
I mean, we probably will.
I guess. To a certain extent, we need to get going on the...
Her ghost is hanging around the house.
Rose's presence is constantly felt in Steven Universe.
I mean, mostly because, like, Steven is his mom.
Steven is his own mom. True. This is true.
It's like some Futurama stuff right there.
Some Futurama stuff right there. Okay. Thanks for listening, guys. We'll see you.
I'm my own grandpa.
That's basically what this is, yeah.
Except mom.
We'll see you guys next time. Monday. I think I'm putting this out Friday.
I don't know.
And then Monday is Gravity Falls. And then from there, we'll see. So thanks for listening,
Question
guys.
mark, question mark, question mark.
Indeed. Thanks for listening. Before I lose my voice. Thanks for listening, guys. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.